Some boy.
So of course we have pallbearers. You want to make any stops along the way?
You're good looking.
From there to here.
Grandsons in the world. And you're not big. Your dad told me you look like the Hulk.
So we are upon service time. Those who are going to help us carry the casket, if I can invite you to follow me to the hearse.
Go guys, go with them. That's an honor. Yep, all of you.
Yes.
Come on, Charlie. We'll let the Hulk go. Joey told me, Charlie, that Jeffrey's been looking out, and he said, he's not big. Gee, the way Joey, he said, he's huge. This is an honor for Jeffrey. You know that? I didn't want any strangers. And with the COVID, you can't call people anyway. It's pretty devastating. I think this is the way, Jeffrey would want it, and it's not real bunch of people. He wasn't that type, just plain simple Jeffrey. I don't understand this thing.
Can we take any pictures?
I don't know if you can or not. I don't know. You do it on the slide and they don't know it, that's their problem. They did pick out a beautiful
I
coffin.
wanted to get a picture.
Yeah, we wanted, when my mother died and Jeff's parents, their coffins were real dark, but we picked it out. But then I was look at the wood. That's wood. Don't let them see you do it. Just do it. Look at that.
Oh,
This is definitely a men's world over there. I feel.
You are definitely loved by a bunch, Bobby.
Oh, I love you, boy. Exactly not a Hulk. Joey says he's bigger than me. He is not.
The last stop.
Look how nice they are. Everybody looks so nice.
Coming? Thank you.
Wait, boys, come help.
That looks good now. I hope so. No, we got to. We don't even have gas.
Yeah, we know for a fact.
I look pretty.
You can, why wouldn't you? Miriam was on purpose. If I can remind everyone to turn off your cell phones.
As I said to Mike and Joey and Freddie, what an honor it is to be here today. I've known you guys for a long time. And going back to my first days here at the Alliance, almost 30 years ago, Marcia and Jeffrey were there every Shabbos. And Jeff never failed to find me at Kiddush to tell me how good I sounded that day. When I didn't sound so good, he still said that, which was the kind of guy that he was. He was a very positive man. I know even till his last days here, he was very positive. Boys, you should learn from that. Glass is half full, not half empty. This is Psalm 23. מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנחה ינהלני, נפשי שואל ינחני במגלי צדק, אוי למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגצל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לבניי שולחן נגד צור, תישן דבר שמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושרתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our Redeemer, 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go, you endure forever. You're always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life, trusting in your love and in your judgments. O Lord in heaven, strengthen those who mourn the loss of Jeffrey Mechanik. Help them to look beyond this moment, to realize that death can never destroy the bonds of everlasting love. Sustain them with the knowledge of our faith that you do not abandon souls to the grave. You never allow your faithful to suffer oblivion. You, O Lord, have taught us the way of life. Through you, we gain eternity. And we all say, Amen. Amen. Good afternoon, everyone. We're all here, but
none of us wants to be here. Whether you're here in person or watching online, it is painful to be here today. It is surely one of life's most trying ordeals to witness the unceasing illness of a loved one. Among other things, it highlights the conflicts and tensions that are full of life. On the one hand, the desire to personally care for a beloved father, doting grandfather, and cherished husband and life partner of 53 years, to keep him at home surrounded by the warmth and familiarity of family. And on the other hand, the realization that the cold and impersonal atmosphere of the hospital, the ICU, the machines and the needles, that would provide the best care and best avenue towards possible recovery. We all would have preferred the first approach, but the relentless disease that Jeffrey Mechanik fought, the battle to overcome it he waged every day, required the second approach. This was not the first time that he needed to battle a threatening illness. He did it in 1984. He did it in 2015. And once again in 2019 through today. Each time, Lo amut ki ahya, I will not die, but live, Jeffrey seemed to be saying, quoting the words of our holy Psalms. He was joined in that sentiment by every member of his family. His grandchildren, Gage, Zachary, Charles, and John Norman, his children, Michael, Dr. Joseph and Nancy, and Dr. Frederick, and of course, his beloved wife, Marcia. Ultimately, in spite of the best medical care imaginable, which left no treatment stone unturned, the good doctor left us this past Shabbat morning. The birthdays of two of his children, Fred and Joey. I would like to think that God turned to his angels and said, Jeffrey is such a good, kind, and loving person who always wanted to help others, that it's enough already. He had suffered enough. Let's bring him home. Of course, this does not make it any easier for his family or friends. Jeffrey Mechanik was indeed an unusually good and kind person. He was, in fact, dedicated professionally and personally to helping others. He was the kind of person you hear about, but rarely ever have the privilege of meeting. The person who would give you the shirt on his back if you needed it. Although I came up with this on my own, I saw that someone on the Feldman's website also contributed a similar sentiment, that when all was said and done, Dr. Mechanik lived up to his name. He saw his task as fine-tuning and fixing the physical ailments that affected his patients' feet, anything short of surgery. And he was indeed very, very good at what he did, and was recognized as such by fellow professionals and by his many patients as a talented, insightful, and caring medical professional. He always remembered that he was treating a person, and therefore it was always the feeling and not the fee that was most important. We're going to hear from members of Dr. Mechanik's family. You're going to hear wonderful remembrances of him. The rabbi of BMH, and as someone who only came to know him in the past few years, I just wanted to share my own impression of him just for a moment or two, because there is something that I think we could all learn from him. Indeed, there are many things that we could learn and we should learn from him. He loved coming to shul. He grew up in an HEA family on the west side, and as an adult on his own, he was a regular attendee, together with his wife and children, at whichever synagogue it was they belonged to at the moment. They always gravitated to the more traditional congregations on both the west and then the east side of town. HEA at first, BMH, BJ, and now for the past few years at BMH, BJ. It's safe to say that they came back in large measure due to their relationship and their love for Cantor Goldstein, whose davening Jeffrey always seemed to enjoy. He desperately wanted to come to shul just a few weeks ago, when he was still home and not yet admitted to the hospital for the last time. Of course, it would be impossible for him to come, but his burning desire to be there was admirable. It was an endearing and a very important part of him. For he loved his Judaism, and he loved his synagogue. I would like to think that on Saturday morning, on the morning that he left us, Jeffrey managed to find his way to the sanctuary in the sky, and was able to take a seat at a special service that was put together especially for him. He wanted to come to shul. I'd like us to all think that he made it to synagogue one more time. I'm going to call upon two of his children who are going to share a few words, and then I'm going to come back and offer some concluding thoughts. I forgot to determine which one of you would speak first. Dr. Frederick is going to come forward. Please give him your attention.
I don't think that you can ever prepare yourself for a day like today. And I don't think Dad would want us to be sad. That just wasn't him. He was the kindest man that anyone who ever had the privilege of meeting or knowing or talking to. He would have made them feel like they were the most important. He made it a regular habit when he attended shul, and when services would conclude, he always made it a point to seek out the rabbi. He always made it a point to seek out the cantor. And then he would go and he would get his nourishment, and then for some reason he would just gravitate to people who were at tables that were by themselves. And I would look at him, and Mom would look at him, and it's like, what is he doing? That was Dad. That's what he did. He never wanted limelight. He never sought out recognition. He used to say there's chiefs and there's Indians. And he was very, very forthright about it. He says, I'm not a chief. He was a very good Indian. He was appreciative and grateful for people who gave of their time and who stood in leadership positions. And he respected those people. And he did all that he could to support those causes. And he did it willingly, and he did it without ever listening to me or Joey, Marsha, anybody else, or Michael. He did what he felt was right. Dad grew up on the west side of Denver, and he attended Colfax Elementary, and then went to Lake Junior High. He was bar mitzvahed at the Hebrew Educational Alliance. Attended North High for 2 years, then East High School, and then was a part of the first graduating class, George Washington High School, 1961. Somehow he never lost track of the people that he grew up with. He valued the people that were on the west side. He used to talk about people who became very prominent in Denver and in Colorado, and he says, oh yeah, I knew that. They grew up right around the corner from me. Or we used to go to the JCC, and I'd watch these people, and they were very good at sports. Was Dad very good at sports? He was an excellent handball player. He was a jogger. What he loved most important, he loved to eat. He loved mom's challah. He loved corned beef and lox and bagel. And Joey and I, when we were going to school in Chicago, I had found out about a deli that I introduced Joey to, and then years later, when Dad would come to see Joey or I, and we were in school, we always made it a point to go to Manny's in Chicago. It's still there today, and we were lucky enough to take him there in 2016. I jumped ahead, but that's okay. After Dad graduated high school, he attended the University of Colorado, both in Boulder and in Denver. He worked hard when he was in high school. He used to work for the sanitation company in Denver. He used to unload kegs of beer for the Coors Company. And he learned the value of hard work, and that was passed off from our grandparents to him and his sister, and then that passed on to us. And I remember hearing it from our grandfather of blessed memory. He used to say, go to school and get yourself a profession. No, I'm sure that sounds familiar. I can't hear. Go to school, get yourself a profession. He says you can do that, you can get an education and make something of yourself, or you can go work at the May Company for minimum wage. Well, somehow working at the May Company just didn't sound appealing. So Dad one day went down to the Denver Public Library, and he thought he was going to be a dentist, because at that time there was a dental school here. And he inquired at the library, and he found out about this profession. At the time it was called chiropody, later became podiatry. So he went to Chicago, because there was a school there. We used to have a school here in Colorado, which closed down in the early 1920s, and he went there, and he said, hey, this might be something I could do. And he enrolled, he got accepted, and he worked hard. And that was really his start. He loved being a part of his class. He graduated as a part of the Illinois College of Podiatric Medicine class of 1967. He was extremely proud of that honor. He loved his classmates, and he sincerely loved those people who served in leadership positions because he knew that was something that he wouldn't excel at. He always supported them, and after Dad passed on Saturday, and after Shabbos, I had a chance to reach out to his class president, and he was so kind to write me back as to say, because Jeffrey was never one to utter a bad word about anybody, never told a lie, never bent the truth. He just was a good, solid guy. And I have heard from a number of those classmates, his class president said to me, he goes, Fred, he says, I can confirm for you, no one ever said a derogatory word about your father. He was a gentle giant. Then as these last couple of days have gone on, I've heard back from more of his classmates. And Dad was loved by all of them. They all loved him as a classmate. They all just thought of him as a gentleman. After podiatry school, Dad came back to Denver, and he wanted, at that time it was tough to open up a private practice. And so he had joined Dr. Etta Watson, and he knew doctors Kai Rosenfeld and Saul Rosenfeld and Dr. Emmerich. And all these people were so helpful in helping Dad to get started. And Dad got going in practice, and he eventually became one of the first attendings to the first podiatry residency program that was accredited here in Colorado. And he was very proud of that. He never practiced out of his realm. He did what he could, and Dad always shared. So whatever he wasn't expertise at or good at, he was so smart. He always called somebody who was there, who had training, and he made sure to share that training with residents, and he helped educate and teach a lot of residents who are still here in practice in Colorado and around the United States today. And I've had the privilege to meet quite a few of those individuals. And again, every one of them, same thing. Your dad was just a special, wonderful, and nice man. Dad continued into practice, and he overcame 1984, and then 2015, he overcame a couple of real serious illnesses. And that never stopped him from continuing his own education. He loved reading. He loved learning. I think it helped his heart and it helped his soul to know that first Joey went into, he thought he was going to be a podiatrist. And it used to be fun because Joey would come home, and I was doing my pre-med here at the time, and we would just talk about cases, and we would talk about case scenarios. And he loved doing that, and he loved going to seminars, and he loved learning. And when Joey got out, or graduated, it was a very proud moment in his life. And then for myself, he used to come pretty regularly. Both him and Mom used to come to Chicago pretty regularly. Again, we would just have fun. I can't think that we were the typical family that took everything so seriously, but we had a good time. And I know Joey's classmates like Dad. I know a lot of my classmates had a chance to meet him. And I remember October the 14th, 1990, I believe it was 1993, when I went for my interview. how fitting was it that after my interview was over, it was a Friday, I went up to Joey's class where they were having what was called a distinguished lecture series, and who happened to be the guest speaker, but Dad's classmate and class president. And I went up to him afterwards, and this man doesn't know me from Adam. I didn't even get a chance to introduce myself, and he just looked at me and he said, "You're Jeff Mechanik's son." I said, "Yes, sir." So Dad always, I don't know what it was, you could put Dad and I next to each other and they'd say, you two aren't related, are you? And they thought that I used to just kind of kid. I said, "Yeah, that's my older brother." And we would later say, "No, that's my dad." Dad loved the fact that both Joey and I eventually migrated back to Denver. Michael had been a fixture, thank goodness. And most importantly, we know he loved Mom with every ounce in his soul. He loved Mike. He loved Joe. He loved me. He loved Nancy. He loved his grandkids. And it just made him light up. He wouldn't have outwardly have said it. In his own way, he just did it. I know that because I have the pictures of when Zachary and Charlie were born, and how Zachary used to love to have Dad pick him up and he'd put him on his shoulders, walk around the house. And the battles that Zachary and Charlie used to have, because they would run to come to the front door of the house, and it was a competition who could get there to ring the doorbell first. And he used to chuckle. And then Johnny, when Johnny was born, used to carry him around, and we have the memories of Dad sleeping on the couch, and either Zachary or Charlie or Johnny would be laying on top of him. Just the cutest things. And I know in his own very special way, he loved Gage too. Dad loved being a podiatrist. He loved going to shul. There was nothing more that made him happy. It was an unwritten thing. On Saturdays, we went to shul. He loved to get dressed up. And I think that's such a compliment, because I remember going to a professional event years ago in Colorado Springs. I remember Dad saying to me, he says, "Where's the event, Dad?" I said, "It's going to be over at the Broadmoor." He says, "Now you remember that's a 5-star joint. Don't go any old way." So I'd gotten home from work and I had put on a nice pair of pants, nice shirt. As I'm walking out the door, I said, "No, that's not what Dad would have wanted." I went back inside and put on a suit and tie. I showed up that night to that event, and his colleagues, many of them who were there, showed up with nice pairs of pants, nice shirts. Most of them didn't have a jacket. And I chuckled to myself how many times the maitre d' would walk up to each of these people and say, "Excuse me, sir or ma'am, I think you'd feel much comfortable in this. Put a jacket on." At that time, a couple of his colleagues came up to me and said, "Fred, when your dad would come to the meetings, he was always the best dressed man in the room." And that's something that filtered down to us. And so he used to say, and he got it from his father, "If you're a professional, you look professional. You can always take the tie off. You can't just go and get it." So that has resonated with all of us. And here we are today, a very good-looking family, and I know he would have thought very highly of that. This last year has been hard. very, very hard. And the last thing that I was able to do for my dad, because his knees had gotten so bad to the point where he couldn't stand, he couldn't walk, he couldn't exercise. It was so hard for him to get around. He had his 50th year reunion to his podiatry school class. And I said, don't worry, you're going to go. And I went with him. And at the time, I didn't really think it was my place to even be there. Yet somehow the members of that class and the staff of the school approached me and more or less made me a guest MC for that event. And the spouses would come up to me, and the other doctors would come up and be like, how do you know all this? How do you know all this? I just took the time. Joey used to ribbed me about it for years. He's like, why are you learning about all this? What is this so important to you? And I said, well, I just don't want to be put in a situation that if I ever meet this person, I would like to know something about him. And what a wonderful evening that was for him to be able to reconnect with his classmates. And it was a warm evening, and I just love the fact that everybody went around the room and talked about how their careers had evolved. And Dad got up in his own simple way, and he thanked the class, and he thanked those people for being his classmates. And he was just very gracious in his delivery. Again, this last year has been very, very tough for him. And when we found out that he had stage 4 bone cancer, I just basically stopped what I was doing. I put my own life on hold, and I said, there's a higher purpose here. If it wouldn't have been for Joey's intervention, who knows how long it would have taken before we would have gotten that diagnosis. And this was at such a horrible time when the COVID and the pandemic had hit. There wasn't a day go by, there wasn't a moment where he didn't get the attention that he needed at home from Michael or myself or from Mom. And Mom has doubted herself these last couple of days of saying, well, was there anything else I could have done or didn't do enough? And the truth of the matter is, Mom, you did so much more than anybody could have asked. And he wouldn't have made it. He would not have made it without your support. He wouldn't have made it without your love. And to me, it didn't bother me a bit. I'm happy I got to be here. I'm happy I could take him to his appointments for five to six straight months. I never missed an appointment, never missed a phone call. If there was medicines to be picked up, Mike would get them, I would get them. There was just, for every want, need that he ever had, we took care of, and he fought like no one I've ever seen before, until it got to the point where we couldn't do it. And no one should have any shame or any regret. I'm happy that during Dad's last couple of days, Joey, myself, and Mom, we came together. And Mom and Dad had always made an agreement with each other. Please don't do anything to hurt each other. Please do everything you can to save one another. Don't hurt us. And I'm happy from the fact that we were able to take out the part that would have been harmful to him. And Dad passed away early morning this past Saturday, as Mom and I were getting ready to go down to the hospital. And someone had said to me, it's terrible to celebrate your birthday when your dad passes. And I said, you know what? No, it's not it's not a bad day. And this is not a horrible memory because I think Joey and I knew that he wouldn't have gone without being able to have been a part of this day with us. And he was. And when he finally succumbed, he wasn't by himself. The staff and the nurses who were with him those last 48 hours, they took such good care of him, and Mom's worry was that he would be alone. He was not alone. And so we had him for 77 years. By today's standards, that surely is not long enough. But we know that he is in a much, much better place. He is home with his family. He's at home with his uncle Meyer, who was a doctor, who had Dr. Meyer Schmover, who had a huge impact on his life. And Dad lost him very, very young. So I am sure that his family is there, and I know that Mom's mom is there. I'm sure she was right there to meet him when he came to his next journey. And Rose always had her little way of communicating. She loved to speak Yiddish, and fortunately for Dad, his grandmother lived with him for the first, I think it was 8 to 10 years of his life, and so all they spoke in the house was Yiddish. So he understood it, and sometimes it used to bug Mom with what they would say, but boy, Rose and him used to they could crack each other up, and we would just sit there just laughing. And it's something that I hope to be able to pass on to my nephews, the goodness that Dad had. In conclusion, you'll never find a kinder, gentler, more polite, and I believe the word is truly spot on when I say Rabbi Cantor. There was nothing about Jeffrey that didn't solidify him being a mensch. He was an absolute mensch to this world, and he is going to be missed by all of us. And I know Cantor, I spoke to you the other day. Dad was drawn to shul because he loved to hear you daven, and it just was a way of keeping him pepped up and keeping everybody pepped up. And I'm sure that is what led Mom and Dad over to BMH, and it has led me back to BMH and Joey and his family. Not to mention all of the wonderful roots that we had created through the Alliance and BMH and BJ through those years, and to be able to connect with all of those people again that's been such a blessing that we're all fortunate for. So with that, Daddy, we're going to miss you. We will try to uphold what you stood for, and we will certainly carry on your legacy. And to the very end, God was never one to complain. He never did. He wouldn't. That just wasn't him. And for those who can't be here, and for those who are watching, for anyone who didn't have a chance to meet Dad or to know Dad, you missed out on a great person. Again, we all love you, and we're going to miss you. Be gesund, sei gesund, and you take care of your family, take care of Rose, and take care of Meredith Morgan, who's all up there with you. I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Well, thanks for everybody for being here online. I would say Cantor. I can't think of anybody. My father was Godwin. That's beautiful. And Rabbi, thank you for being here. And we wanted you. And Jim, thank you yesterday for that beautiful education on the next life. It's really meaningful. I was just thinking what I was going to say, and so there's a little Jewish mysticism. I have something about 3. January 2nd, we have 2 births and a death. And so to me, it was okay that he passed on this day. And probably the best birthday present I ever had was that he passed on it because his suffering had ended, because it had been for so long. But then I also started thinking again on numbers. And I turned 51, and I couldn't have gone out on a better day because my dad's favorite plane was a P-51. So I figured he just shot up there very quickly. The numbers seemed to align. For me, though, I would say my father gave me the foundation to be the best possible person I could be. And he's taught me how to get this to the patients that we care for every day. And I know this because my wife tells me to come out because we've spent too much time sometimes with these people, but I'm really connected to the people I help as well as my boys are, all 4 of them, giving themselves for others. They're selfless beings. And with my wife, Nancy, I was able to complete my person who I am still working on to be the most selfless and giving person that we can. And so I thank you for that. And in short, I know you're surrounded by loved ones here. You had a beautiful life, kids, grandchildren. And now I know you're happy with your family again. And so have a blessed afterlife. And I hope this isn't the end. We'll see you on the other side. Amen. Thank you.
There's really not much else that needs to be said. Very touching tributes, paraphrased in the book of Proverbs in the paragraph known as the Eshet Chayil. It says, Kamu vaneha vayashua. Children get up and praise their parent, saying, many have done well, but you seem to have done better than anyone else. And I think we heard that, and I think we all felt the sincerity of those feelings being expressed. And it's a wonderful tribute when a father can leave behind not just family, but also a legacy of such goodness and life lessons. I want us just for a moment as we conclude this section before we lower the casket into the grave and then place earth into the grave. I just want us to close our eyes for a moment and imagine that you're looking at a tree. And I would like you to see all the parts of the tree. And imagine that there are people represented by each part of the tree. Some people are leaves, and they may only be around for a little bit because the wind comes and blows them off, and you can't always depend on them because what can you do? They're a little weak and they're just held together. They give you shade when you need it, but you can't really expect more than that, and it's not their fault. That's just who they are. The leaves are connected to branches, and there indeed are some people who are like branches of a tree. They're a little stronger, but you still have to be careful, because if the right kind of storm comes along, the branch may break, and you could lose them. And most times they will break when the going gets really tough. They're stronger than leaves, but you have to be careful about putting all your weight on them. You can't be mad at that. That's just who they are. And of course, you have the trunk of the tree, and then you have the roots of the tree. If you can find people in your life who are like the roots of a tree, then you found something really special. The roots of the tree are hard to find because they're not trying to be seen. We've heard that Jeffrey was not one for the limelight, not seeking the limelight. If you thrive, they're happy. They stay low key and don't let the world know that they're there, but their presence is certainly felt. And if you go through a really tough storm, they're always going to be there to hold you up, because that is exactly their job. Come what may, they're going to nourish you, they're going to feed you, and they're going to water you. The tree has many limbs and many leaves, but very few roots. So as we look at our own lives, let's try to assess how many leaves or branches or roots we have. And let's try to find out, what are each of us in other people's lives? I'd like to say that Jeffrey Mechanik was a root kind of person. We thank God for his being the root and the support for so many. Tehei nishmato tzra b'tzara chayim. May the soul of Dr. Jeffrey Mechanik, Yaakov Avraham ben Nehemiah ben Miriam, rest in his eternal home. And we all say,
Amen.
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 On behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, it is my honor and privilege to present this flag in memory of your husband, your father, and the service that he provided for our country.
So we're going to lower the casket, and while the casket is being lowered, we're going to take an opportunity to tear the ribbon representing the tearing of clothing. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So in the ancient world, people would tear clothing, and people didn't have a lot of clothing. So tearing clothing was a pretty significant statement. Well, even though we have a lot more clothing than the ancients did, many people are reluctant to ruin that nice suit. But our tradition is that it's a cathartic sign of grief to make a tear. And we're going to do that. I'll ask you to rise if you can. We're going to make a blessing. We're going to say amen after the blessing, and then the ribbon is already slightly torn. I'll ask you just to tear it about another inch. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the world, and we believe to be the righteous. You can do it if you can use your hand. Then after that, you may go and place it. I think I wrote it. I really wanted to.
You guys want to help?
ישוב העפר על הארץ כשהיה, הרוח תשוב אל האלוהים אשר נתנה. Thus returns to the earth as it was. Spirit returns to God. Oh.
Just one another hand. I'll help you over here. Where I say the cottage and just
אסור תמיד בכל מעשה מיום ולמה תעשה, ועושה חסד חינם לנו תעשה, בזכות הנעקד כסה הקשיבה ויעשה. צדיק עצה אדוני לחמית ולאחרת, אשר בידך פתאום כל רוחות. חלילה לך זיכרוננו לפחות. ישבו נעימך ברחמים עלינו כפחות. כי לך אדון הרחמים והסליחות. אדם, בן שנה יחיה, עוד שני יחיה, מה יתרום לו כלו היה יחיה. ברוך דיין האמת ממית ומחיה. דיין אמת שופט צדק ואמת, ברוך דיין אמת, כל משפטיו צדק ואמת. נפש כל חי בידך צדק מלא ימינך. אחרי מפליטת צאן ידך בצום על המלאך חרב ידך. כל העיסה ברז על לידייה. אשר עיניך פקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם. לתת איש כדרכיו כפרי מעללה והגיד כי השם אדוני. צורי ולא אבלת בו. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח. ישם אדוני וברך וברחום יחבר אדון ולא ישם. שבא לישיבה פה ולא יאיר. כל חמצון. Yes, we're going to do it. We'll say the mourners Kaddish together. One of the things about the Kaddish is that there's no mention of death in the Kaddish. It's actually an affirmation of life. And like Jeffrey, who taught us how good it is to be close to God and to go to synagogue and to be influenced by our traditions, the Kaddish allows individuals who might choose to do something different and might look for an excuse to turn their back, to say, Yitgadal Yitgadash. God's name is great, and I can get up in community and I can say that because that will be supported by the members of the community. So we're going to ask Marcia, and we'll ask Michael and Joseph and Frederick to offer the words of the Kaddish together with me. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Hey Rabba, Bialma Divrach Virute, Biamlich Malchute, Chayecha, Viomecha, Uvachaye, V'chol Bet Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'bizman Kariv, V'imru Amen, Yehi Shmei Rabba, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbahar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitalem, Yitala, Shemei the Kutshabrichu, Le'ela, Mikol Birchata, Shirata, Tushmachata, Benechamata, Da'amiran Bialma, Vimeru Amen, Yehi Shlama Rabba, In Shmaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, Vimeru Amen, Aseh Shalom, V'mromav, V'ya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Vimeru Amen. Please remain standing for the memorial prayer.
El Malerachamim Shocher Hamerumi Hametem Enuchanechona Kanefer Yashechina B'mahalot Kedoshim U'Diorim Kezar Harakia Mazehirim Et Nishmat Yaakov Abraham Ben Nehemia v'Miriam she'alach le'olamo b'gan Eden oy b'gan Eden tehei menuchato amanu v'larachamim hastirei u'b'seiter genatech לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Dr. Jeffrey Mechanik, Yaakov Avraham, the son of Nehemiah and Miriam, who now rests in his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you to remember the many worthy and righteous deeds he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be ever bound up in the bond of our lives. May he ever rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
As you might imagine, during COVID, in-person Shiva is kind of difficult, but the family will, at their discretion, be joining our weeknight service online at 6 p.m. And we'll say the Kaddish at that service, which is the tradition. And we're going to ask that the family in mourning form, those who are not in mourning, form a double line. And we're going to just offer some words of comfort to start the Shiva, which begins right now. And everyone is going to repeat the following words after me. You can form a double line going out towards the car. One side can follow the cantor. So we're going to say these words to Marcia, to Michael, to Joey, and to Fred. I'll ask everyone else to repeat the words after me. Hamako,
Hamakom,
Yenachem,
Menachem,
Etchem,
Etchem,
Betov,
B'toch,
Sha'ar,
Sha'ar,
Avele,
Avelei,
Zion,
Sion,
Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim.
May God comfort you among all who mourn in Zion and for Jerusalem. And we all say,
Amen.
Amen.
Can you turn to your cars, everyone? The grave will be filled in. Can I do, you want to take Mom's mask?
They'll be out there. They're fine. All right. Keep it together.
Doctor, we'll see you. Michael, we'll see you.
One of these days. All right.
All right.
One of these days we'll get our vaccines. We can get together again.
All right, guys, we'll see you.
Good to see you guys. Take care. See you soon. Yeah, I know, man. Gangs gave me a few of them.